Fireworks mixes with sirens as ambulances rush to the fiery scene. An explosion this afternoon ripped through the country's most popular fireworks market, San Pablito, about 20 miles north of Mexico City, a popular destination so close to Christmas. The death toll now stands at 27, with at least 80 more victims injured. The most critical are being flown down. Hospitals by helicopter. The blast was so strong, Mexican officials say nearby homes were damaged and cars were reduced to burned out shells. So far, the cause of the explosion is unknown as rescuers comb through the smoldering rubble, hoping the death toll will not rise. Joe Fryer, NBC News.
Who gave you the right to issue such a decree, denying our eternal rights in Jerusalem? Would this council have had the nerve to condemn your country for building homes in your capital?
Jesus, we desperately need your power and strength to do what you've asked me to do tonight. I ask humbly now to give me the courage and help me to say it from my heart without fear and trembling. In Christ's name,
after years
amen.
of following the law to be trampled and the situation to spiral downward, today's resolution may rightly be seen as a last attempt to preserve the two-state solution and revive the path for peace.
The move, or lack thereof, is seen as a parting blow to Israel's Netanyahu from President Obama. The pair have had a rocky relationship. Obama has targeted the settlements in peace talks, though they have largely failed. But President-elect Trump holds a very different and pro-Netanyahu view, as hinted at by this tweet. He also hopes to appoint David Friedman, a hardline Zionist, as US ambassador to Israel. The Security Council had been due to vote on the resolution on Thursday, but Egypt withdrew the motion under pressure from Israel and Trump. Israel say they reject and will not abide by the ruling.
From the White House to 10 Downing Street, that's the move some wishful Brits hope President Obama will make in January. Twitter in Britain exploded Wednesday after President Obama's post-election speech, with people calling for him to rule across the pond. There are already thousands of tweets. Many said that the UK is ready to take him if the US is done with him. Others asked if it's even possible. Unfortunately for them, the Obamas plan on staying in Washington after the president's term is up.
On a neural level, it reacts as if we're being threatened, even if this threat comes from harmless opinions or facts that we may otherwise find helpful and could rationally agree with.
This is a 2-minute vote.
The House be in order.
Mr. Speaker, I want to raise a parliamentary inquiry initially with reference to the fact that Mr. Ryan, our Speaker, has told us if people were in the well that the vote would be held open. I was standing in the well. No one came or no one had the courage to come into the well to change their vote. But notwithstanding that, the vote kept changing. Mr. Speaker, from a parliamentary perspective, how is that possible? The inquiry is, how can the vote change when no one comes to the well to change their vote?
The chair had not yet announced requests for changes.
I didn't hear the chair request change, but I do know that from my own personal observation, not one of those members who apparently changed their vote because it kept changing on the board came to this well and had the courage to change from green to red or red to green. How is that possible, Mr. Speaker? Magically, without anybody coming to the well to change their vote, but giving to the majority the right to have you do it without coming to the well and telling America that you were voting, changing your vote.
The gentleman's request is withdrawn. Okay.
After setting off alarm bells throughout the campaign about how he would handle nuclear weapons, Donald Trump today signaled he wants more nukes, shocking nuclear experts by tweeting, "The United States must greatly strengthen and expand its nuclear capability until such time as the world comes to its senses regarding nukes," reversing U.S. policy since Ronald Reagan to cut the number of nuclear weapons. Only hours earlier, Vladimir Putin, who U.S. intelligence officials say was personally involved in the cyber attacks to influence the U.S. election, told his generals, "We need to enhance the combat capability of strategic nuclear forces." Last spring, Trump drew fire for saying he might use nuclear weapons in Europe or against ISIS.
They're hearing a guy running for president of the United States talking maybe using nuclear weapons. Nobody wants to hear that about an American president.
Why are we making them? Why do we make them?
Now, less than a month before Trump takes office, arms control experts are stunned.
All during the campaign, Donald Trump has dealt with nuclear weapons very loosely, very cavalierly. And this tweet may have just started a new nuclear arms race.
What is your concern when you see what sounds like new policy being made on Twitter?
Every word matters. Strengthen the nuclear arsenal, fine. Expand it, everybody's harping on that word. Whether Donald Trump meant it or not, he is changing U.S. policy.
A Trump spokesman says that the president-elect's tweet was referring to preventing nuclear proliferation while improving nuclear deterrence. No further explanation, raising big questions tonight about nuclear policy under President Donald Trump. Kate?
Andrea Mitchell in Washington. Andrea, thank you.
When a person faces the paradox of wanting purpose while thinking that human existence is meaningless, cognitive dissonance occurs. Throughout history, this has led many to reach for spiritual and religious guidance, challenging science as it failed to give answers to existential questions, such as why or what am I?
So you're looking at Pope Francis. He walked into a room full of cardinals at the Vatican today and then blasted the Vatican bureaucracy, denouncing the, quote, malevolent resistance he says he's encountering and reforming the bureaucracy there. Going on to say, quote, the devil inspires nasty intentions, often dressed as lambs.
A Fox News alert, ISIS calling on its followers to attack churches as millions of Americans prepare to head out to Christmas Mass.
Federal authorities on alert after pro-ISIS websites publishing a list of churches and pastors in the United States.
Officials saying there are no credible threats, but sent the warning out of an abundance of caution.
I spoke with one pastor tonight who says security at churches has been a concern for years and says with the recent arrest of a homegrown suspected terrorist, he says you can never take those threats lightly.
Every threat has to be taken seriously.
Pastor Spencer Ellis says there's a lot of preparation leading up to the Christmas celebration here at Citadel Praise Church on Detroit's west side. Tonight and on stage, the church choir is tightening up numbers it will perform. But behind the scenes, Pastor Ellis says security is always a priority.
Most churches, even including ours, have stepped up our security training from Detroit Police to the FBI.
Social psychology often looks at the basic human need to fit in and calls this the normative social influence. When we grow up, our moral and ethical compass is almost entirely forged by our environment. So our actions are often a result of the validation we get from society.
They are blowing whistles to remind President Joseph Kabila of the end of his term. These young Congolese want him to step down. And so they are occupying the streets and mounting barricades to show their anger. We will be out in the streets until he leaves, he tells me. We are not afraid of him and his forces. He's got to go. There was no election as planned this year, and it sparked a political crisis. But the malaise is deeper. We're not here in support of the opposition either, he says. We're here for our own rights. Well, we've seen similar scenes all around the city. People are out in the streets shouting Kabila out, and defying the security forces. There isn't a mass demonstration in the capital because of the heavy security deployment. But we've seen running battles between protesters and police and military forces in many parts of the city. And the threat is ever present. The security forces are firing live rounds. And they're also sweeping the neighborhoods, making arrests. Earlier on, one of the main opposition leaders, 84-year-old Etienne Tshisekedi, posted a video on social media.
I launch a solemn appeal to the Congolese people to not recognize the illegal and illegitimate authority of Joseph Kabila and to peacefully resist his coup d'etat.
Protests were also reported in other cities across the country. There were demonstrations in Lubumbashi and in Boma, where 4 people were killed. Mobs attacked the Electoral Commission building and burnt a tribunal in Lwebo. Fighting broke out near the airport of Kananga when a local militia attacked the army. Back in Kinshasa, the newly appointed Prime Minister, Sami Badibanga, read a short declaration to the press, but he didn't take any questions.
For the youth, I reiterate my commitment to respond to their expectations and aspirations for the improvement of their own being, and I urge them not to succumb to despair and manipulation.
Coming from the opposition, Mr. Badibanga was expelled from his party 5 years ago. He recently signed a deal with the ruling coalition to accept that President Kabila remain in power. The main roads of the capital were deserted for a second day, but in a city where millions struggle to scrape together their daily necessities, how long can it remain a ghost town? Thomas Fessy, BBC News, Kinshasa.
You can no longer describe the right half of someone's face, but you will never mention it. You will never see it as a problem or even realize that something has changed. Since this affects more than just your perception of the real world and also applies to your mental images, it is not just a sensory problem, but a fundamental change in your consciousness.
More than 5,000 migrants are thought to have drowned in the Mediterranean Sea in 2016, a record figure described as a devastating milestone by the UN Refugee Agency. On Thursday alone, some 100 mainly West Africans were feared to have perished, making the treacherous crossing to Europe.
This situation highlights the urgent need for states to increase pathways for admission of refugees, such as resettlement, private sponsorship, family reunification and student scholarship schemes, among others, so they do not have to resort to dangerous journeys and the use of smugglers.
The UN says smugglers are sending large numbers of migrants to Europe simultaneously, making the work of rescuers more difficult. Bad weather and ever flimsier vessels are also blamed for an average of 14 deaths a day in the Med, among those risking everything.
Our top story tonight: 'tis a season to be jolly and to be scammed. The crooks don't take holidays. They'll do anything, it seems, to try and get their hands on your money. The latest warning comes from Orchard Park tonight, but it's really been happening everywhere. Someone calls you on the phone and claims to be raising money for the Police Officers Association or some similar group. The real police say, don't fall for it. Here's 7 Eyewitness News reporter Paula Suro.
They were looking for donations for the fallen family members from the police department.
Western New Yorkers, if you get a phone call saying something along those lines, you may want to hang up. Police say it's a new scam going around asking for donations in the form of a one-time credit card payment. It's a scam Heather Renaud from Lockport didn't fall for.
She was just talking really persistent, almost like I had to make a donation. And I've made donations before and they've never spoken in that manner at all.
Orchard Park Police posting this message on their Facebook page, warning residents in the area about the scam that's leaving some thinking twice about giving away the money in their pockets.
I went with my gut feeling and I told her I can't do it right now. It's Christmas time, just because I had a bad feeling about it.
But Rebecca Vincent, who didn't want to show her face, wishes she got that bad feeling a long time ago. She received a similar phone call Wednesday night and says it's the third scam call she's gotten within the last 2 months.
I thought, geez, if I'm lying to the police people saying that I don't have any money, I better at least give them $10. You know, I thought something's going to happen to me if I don't.
So she donated $10 with the first phone call in October, and although she hasn't checked her bank account, Vincent says she started seeing the red flags when she kept getting the same phone calls.
I'm never going to do this again. I mean, and I feel bad because what if it's illegitimate?
Now, we tried calling that phone number Vincent says she has been getting phone calls from, and look what happens each time.
You have reached a non-working number. Announcement 14, switch 5, 6.